Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. This is the panel session, and in a moment I'll get the panellists to introduce themselves. I was going to say each other. No, that would be harder. To introduce themselves. But I've been told the logic of the formation of this panel is as follows. That to my immediate left and to my immediate right, I've got two people who are heavily involved in implementation of BIM. To their immediate left and his immediate right, you've got two people who are particularly interested in blockchain and involved in blockchain. So rather than sit them on opposite sides, they just sat where they wanted to, and it's just made me have to sort of think where they are. But without further ado, my name's Dave Greenwood, just presented, so that'll probably be fresh in your memory. I'll just get the panellists to introduce themselves, or in French, to present themselves. Sonia.
Yeah, of course. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sonia Zahiruddini. Is it on? No, it's not on. Oh, it is. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So I'm the BIM strategy manager at High Speed 2, the new high-speed rail line in the UK, and I'm responsible for the development of the strategy, our objectives around BIM, making sure we have clear sets of requirements for our supply chain, and we are actually realising cost savings through the utilisation of BIM, and ensuring that we have a consistent implementation of BIM across the programme. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob Learney. I'm the lead technologist for blockchain distributed ledger at Digital Catapult, UK not-for-profit, just in case any of you are new in the audience.
I'm Sylvain Rees. I'm in charge of the BIM for the Grand Paris Express, and I'm a client advisor for BIM processes, strategy, and training, and all around the collaborative processes as well. And I'm working since 2 years in this society with a team of 4 people.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. I am Fernando Santiago. I'm in charge of the blockchain practice in Big Innovation Center, an innovation hub in London.
Okay, thanks very much, panellists. Now, the idea is, my role, I guess, is twofold. To present some stimulating questions to the panellists, but I think I'll be all right there because there are some stimulating questions that will come from the floor, I'm sure, looking at everyone. And the second one is to stop them fighting if they disagree too much, and I'm sure that won't happen because they're all very nice people. So let me just start the ball rolling, and we'll turn first of all to the BIM practitioners, to Sonia and Sylvain, and just say the question there is they're both in what we would say in the thick of it. They're both in at the sharp end. Two very, very big projects, probably the biggest projects, biggest infrastructure projects in each of our countries. So they're well versed in some of the problems. Hypothetically, what might blockchain do for you in the day-to-day or the processes that you see involved in those projects? Who shall we go to first?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. So I think from my perspective, it's a twofold. So I got involved in an initiative a couple of years ago before our commercial director left the business, unfortunately, and she was a big advocate of faster payment. So there is a massive opportunity for us to look at how we integrate BIM with our payment systems, and how do we digitize our processes, how do we systemize our processes to streamline it, and then how do we integrate that with our BIM processes and methodologies. The other aspect is, as part of the strategy, we've got this vision for developing a virtual railway as we are going through design and construction, and hopefully we can then hand over a digital twin once we start establishing our IoT platform and once we start integrating with sensors. So we have kind of pushed the boundaries beyond BIM. We are embracing BIM, and we are using BIM as an enabler So we're working with the ethos of let's build it twice, let's build it physically, actually let's build it digitally first and make sure it's been validated and verified before we go on site. So this digital twin initiative, I think for me, the marriage of BIM, blockchain and IoT to develop this digital platform twin, it could be very powerful.
Thanks, Sonia. Sylvain?
Yes, I have some notes. For me, one of the main problems with BIM is data and how to work with the data during all the life of the project. Because for today, BIM is more like a digital model, 3D models, and a model with the data integrated. So the standardization of the information structure associated with the model is one of the challenge for me in BIM. And it asked me some questions. How can we trace the evolution of the different documents and models in the most transparent manner? How to define the evolving responsibility of each party in an information model of the project? How could we determine if the changes that occur comply with the informational requirements of the project or company? And in so complex project of infrastructure, we need to capture requirements of the project from start in the way of comparing it as much as necessary during the progress of the project and until the as-built records, and later from facility management. So to assure the convergence between as designed and as built permanently, I think that blockchain could be a good issue.
Thanks, Sylvain. So that was quite a full shopping basket. So I'm going to go to the blockchain experts on that one first, and then remind them of what Sonia said. So, Rob, are you happy to go first?
Yes, certainly. I'd like to start with a question for Sylvain, if that's okay. In the course of your project, how many companies do you have to interact with?
We have more than 100 companies each day,
Okay.
on different level, tendering or advisor or project manager.
Okay. It's quite extensive,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
So the scale of transformation to bring any of those into the same system as you, do you know the key parties who you would want to have on a shared infrastructure with you at the beginning? Because it's probably not possible to have all 100 from the beginning.
Yes.
But you may have some key players who would want to join you on that journey and experiment with some of these newer technologies with you.
I think that the key players could be the project manager or some of the project managers, and we could imagine that one of those project managers could be understand what we could imagine with the blockchain.
Mm.
But there is in this project so much problems, or the main objective of this project is Olympic Games in 2024. So the delay is the first objective.
Mm.
So even more with the BIM, is sometimes difficulties in the daily work. So I'm afraid that blockchain today in this project could be not understood by all the players.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that impression that you have. It's and the idea that you could switch everything, every behaviour, every component of your practice between 100 companies before 2024 is very unlikely. But it's about finding those key points that are going to make the biggest business impact. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know BIM, but but I do know blockchain.
Quick question for Sonia, but she wants to say something first, so I'll follow it up with a question.
On that note, can I ask a question? I mean, I'm not a blockchain expert, but I think from a BIM point, because I completely agree, it's all about the data and it's about adopting an object-based approach to data modelling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was listening to your presentations earlier, I was thinking, can we utilise blockchain technology to perhaps give these different objects that we are modelling some sort of digital identity? So you can actually then, I think that would remove some of that liability issue, because currently it's very much, everything is transactional, it's file-based, and it's too onerous, and I think this could be a great opportunity for us to be able to actually move away from that and become more data-driven. But again, it's more of a question to yourselves perhaps as blockchain specialists, because again, as I said, I don't know whether that's possible, but given some sort of digital identity, I think...
Well, before Rob answers that, just a matter of interest, Sylvain said about 100 companies he's got to. What about HS2? What are you...
I couldn't give you a number, but the scale of our supply chain is massive.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about companies that we go into direct contracts with, and because of that, and because of the sort of capacity issues and de-risking some of the liabilities, we've actually adopted a more of a distributed approach to how we are managing data. So that's why I'm asking the question, because I think that would remove some of the because simple things like multi-party data sharing agreements, it's very difficult to get those things in place in a construction project.
Yes.
Okay, back over to Rob, and then I'll ask Fernando to chip in after Rob. He's been listening patiently.
Sorry. As to the digital twinning piece, it's huge. It's across multiple sectors beyond construction. I mean, if there was a consistent, reliable way to create tagged data for music, film, photography, things would be a lot easier in many sectors. So I know the JPEG committee, for example, is exploring the potential of blockchain, or the potential of new standards so that images are easier to permanently track using blockchain. And there's researchers in the UK, for example, down at the University of Surrey, doing projects looking at building longitudinal data models for the National Archives. So John Collimos, University of Surrey. So if you digitize a critical document today, and all the digital formats change in 50 years' time, and a bit of this video degrades, how do you know that that is the exact same thing that you captured at the beginning? Mm-hmm. So bit rot and things like this. But it's presumably a bit easier with CAD models, because it's a consistent piece of digital data.
This is the problem of the CAD model in being parametric and used for other things. So it's transformative.
Mm.
Wonderful fun. Yeah. It sounds like the industry, it sounds like the CAD industry itself has to do a little bit of moving forward or coming together before you're going to see some of those solved. But,
So, Fernando, any thoughts on what's been said so far?
In terms of supply chain, as you mentioned, to put all the actors of the supply chain in the blockchain, at the moment you mentioned around 100 suppliers. I think at the moment, from my point of view, it's not feasible. No? I mean, if you want to implement blockchain in a supply chain at the moment, you have to take a single piece of the supply chain, usually go for a single one. Really simple supply chain with a really clear structure. If you have a vertical integrated supply chain without your supply chain, if mine is the best one. It's a kind of centralized, you want to decentralize, and use the best one to implement blockchain. When we're speaking about putting all the records in the blockchain, we're speaking about traceability and visibility. Traceability is already in the construction system. You have the traceability. You cannot get the traceability in seconds, but if you were to get the traceability of your concrete, who is put it in that bin, you can get it after 1 week or 2 weeks, even going to put all the paperwork back. You can put all that information. The information is in the system. Blockchain, what it's going to provide is to put all that information on a single database when we want to do that. But traceability doesn't mean visibility. You have all the traceability in the system, but still you can have in the system, in blockchain systems, even information asymmetry. I mean, do you want to know, to tell your supplier of concrete you have put this batch of concrete in that bin?
No,
It
not today.
It might yet or it might not. It might yes or it might no. Then sometimes we're speaking about blockchain like it's gonna be the silver bullet to create traceability and visibility. If we don't remove from the system, and this is human part, information asymmetry, we can have all the data in blockchain, but you cannot see the visibility. You don't have the visibility in the system. Then, for me, the first step is you want to put your supply chain on a blockchain, is to take a really simple supply chain within your supply chain, where it's not a disintegrated supply chain. I would go for a vertical integrated supply chain if you have any within your supply chain. And after that, put it on that, do the first try, and after go for the rest. Because that is, I mean, blockchain is not a silver bullet for everything. Provide traceability, visibility, but
your piece about traceability versus visibility is very interesting, isn't it? Because you could adopt the model that everyone gets to see everything. You know, we're putting it in the ledger, everyone gets to see everything. Actually, that might be a bit too dangerous.
Scary.
For your business practices, might be a bit scary. And as Fernando says, the concrete supplier doesn't really need to know that you've put it exactly here at this time. So that you can explore different models of designing the ledger that only make sure that the right people see the right information, or just to prove that things exist. All these zero knowledge proofs that people are exploring today, so that you can prove that something happened, or you can even query data without actually seeing the underlying data. Or, again, we're talking maybe levels of complexity of designing your system that you may not want to engage with in the first go, but things that can be thought about and added on later on. Going to the traceability piece, what would you say about identities in blockchain? Because obviously to trace who has touched what when, you need to have all those people with consistent identities, either at corporate level, so this was HS2 who signed this, or this was this person within this department at HS2 that signed this. So corporate versus human identities.
Yes, as mentioned in my talk about identities, I think that is one of the main roles the governments have to take, provide that digital identity, that digital twin to the companies.
Sorry, could you speak up a bit?
Sorry.
Oh, is it switched on? Just check. Maybe not switched on.
Hello?
Oh,
Sorry there. Coming back to the point about digital identity, I think that is a crucial role for the governments to take there. I mean, to approve the identity of the different companies who are on the blockchain. The twin between the physical company, as you say, the HS2 offline, and the company. Someone has to certify that company. The company is operating on the blockchain, because at the end of the day, with that company, you are going to do transactions. But when we speak about companies, we speak about people. We speak about IoT devices. Because, for example, in supply chains, like in the pharma cold chain, in the pharma cold chain, there is now applications about how the temperature of the drugs are coming from the supplier to the pharmacy. That is monitored with IoT devices. That IoT devices have to have an identity. Someone has to calibrate that IoT devices, because although you are going to know the temperature of your product is the right temperature, the whole chain, if the device is not calibrated in the right way, someone can cheat the system. I mean, blockchain can provide trust to the system, but the humans is still in there.
Yeah.
Someone has to certificate the engineer who certificate that.
Your piece on corporate identity is very interesting, because it shouldn't be too hard to implement that system. We expect our governments to provide ways to register companies, and to track the registrations and who's operating the company for tax reporting or jurisdictional purposes. So just giving that existing thing that I know in the UK you can find it on the internet through Companies House. France, I'm sure, has the exact same system. To just give them a digital signature, public-private key system, is not impossible.
Just analogous to that.
You've just got to do it. Someone's just got to do it.
Someone has to do it.
And maybe that'll require a bit of a business case built around it to show the level of fraud by fraudulent identities of corporations, things like this. Let's see what gets them moving. I've got some ideas, but also Canada is currently experimenting. The province of Ontario is experimenting with VONX, the Verified Organisations Network, I think using the Sovereign Network, which is meant to be tracking digital signatures of corporations. So it's quite an exciting time for all this stuff.
Well, patient audience, you've heard what the BIM experts are saying, and you've heard what the blockchain experts are saying. What do you say? Are there any questions from the floor or comments? Tim?
Yeah, I've got a loud enough voice.
Loud voice, so you're all right.
I've got a question to ask, but perhaps I could give a little background first, which will let you know why I'm asking the question. Right? I've been at UCL for the last 6 years, but before that my career was very much in industry, in civil engineering and infrastructure, and for about the 20 years before I joined UCL I was innovation director, technology innovation, knowledge management, whatever, at sequentially 2 large globally operating engineering design consultancies. Right? So through that type of experience, 2 things. Number one, this is not an academic comment I'm about to say, but my gut feel is that in looking to invest, there are 2 main drivers in the construction sector. One is fear and one is greed, right? And taking them in reverse, the greed driver is, if I invest in something, I might get a bit more money, a bit more profit as a result, right? The fear motivator is, if I don't invest in doing something, I might go out of business. Not surprisingly, the fear motivator is much stronger, right? And in an industry where the most of the tier 1 contractors are making paper-thin margins, they really don't like to splash the cash. Splash the cash too far. That's one point. Second point is, for my sins, I've had an involvement with BIM since before the mid-90s. We didn't call it then. Another company I was working at the time, I had a budget, I had a corporate team, and we went after a project we called VROOMS. Sounds much better than BIM. Virtual Reality and Object-Orientated Modelling Systems.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and I was working then with IAI that became Building Smart to try and get some traction. Nothing happened until we had a change of government in the UK in 2010, and the incoming government found that the outgoing government had spent all the money. Right? For whatever reasons, and I know some of them, the new government decided within a few months that BIM could get them out of the pickle they were in, and they were fed and accepted the promise that BIM would reduce capital costs by 20%. So they'd either have 5 for 4 or they'd make 20% savings. And after that I was part of a steering group that helped deliver what was a mandate, not by regulation or legislation in the UK, but by the government using purchasing power. And basically what they said, that for all central government procurement of buildings and infrastructure, if you don't, by end of March 2016, if you don't conduct the work within a 3D level 2 BIM environment, you're not going to work for us, laddie. Right? So we don't mind who works for us, but if you want to work for us, you'll do things in the way we'd like. Okay, and that's been quite effective. So, sorry, that's very flabby background. The question I've got is simple. And given that, or given the fact that on really large BIM projects at the moment, it's only pretty much the tier 1s and tier 2s and maybe the client who gets involved. So the lower levels of people who are contributing so much don't get an input at all. Given that, if blockchain is to get into the industry, David earlier used the term tipping point, I'll use the term trigger point. How many people, how many organizations are going to have to jump in the same way at the same time, and who's going to be telling them to do that? Because I really don't believe that with the fragmented industry we have, there'll be a group of supply chain players who get together and suddenly decide to do something well for the next project.
Well, that was very sneaky because it was a very gentle introduction but a nasty question at the end. and Rob is about to answer to your satisfaction.
The flippant answer is as few as 3 with the right project in mind. The bigger answer goes to your philosophy of industry transformation with blockchain. If you believe there will be one chain to rule them all, so everyone in the industry will be using the exact same ledger to correlate or to coordinate their activities, or if you think these will be individual, slightly bespoke deployments per project. So this would be the HS2 project ledger, and then that would be the Grenfell rebuilding ledger. And my philosophy is that we will see great advancement in the underlying technologies and understanding of the purchasing and implementation of these technologies, that we will have a mass of distributed applications where you literally fire up a system in your business, it integrates into whatever existing systems you have, but gives you additional functionality that cannot be achieved without a distributed ledger. My answer can't be more precise than that, I'm afraid.
I'm by no means a Luddite. Right? And for those people who don't know what a Luddite is, it goes back to, what, the 18th century in the UK, where...
Like saboteur.
Oh, yes, in French,
where
yes.
people started, breaking new technology as it was then because it was taking jobs. Right? I'm not a Luddite. Well, but no, I agree. I note what you say and I agree it. I'm not meaning to be rude at all, but I can think of hardly any, if any, examples in the construction sector where groups of people have voluntarily decided to do things in a radically different way. Yep. I can think of a lot of examples where groups of people have done things because the alternative is not to work at all.
Yeah, there's a government carries a big stick, and they should start maybe just showing it a little bit to industry and say, move in this direction. I mean, the Dutch did a great one by actually going out there and saying to industry, start experimenting with distributed ledgers. The British government hasn't done that. I don't know whether the French government has, but that would be at least a little bit more helpful for government to make some pronouncement that say, maybe with the same energy that they do with AI, which is totally unproven, bloody fairyland stuff, they're very happy to pronounce that this is going to save us. Why not talk about tangible tech that's actually, anyway.
Okay. Question there. Thanks.
One question that I have, and this pertains more familiar with the U.S. market, but when it comes to public projects specifically, one of the issues that we run into is that you still commonly have things like design, bid, build, where you, in many cases, will be financially incentivized to do your job slower, not better. And so when you're pitching an industry on efficiency, and a large part of the industry sees efficiency as, it's not the pace at which you get from point A to point B, but the loss of A.1, A.2, A.3, and any other dollar that's hanging out there. And so how do you pitch really the largest stakeholder of the industry, I think, which is the contractors, when they oftentimes will have a financial incentive not to be more efficient?
Yeah, very good. It's there are perverse incentives to stay the same. Yeah. Any thoughts on that from...
I've got thoughts on everything if you want them. I mean,
You're good value for money.
I think that one of the biggest new employment sectors that's going to arise from the blockchain world is behavioral economists. I think that there's some interesting games you can play with incentives to make people actually do the right thing. But the idea of a major contractor with their little tree of people living under them, you could also argue, does that even need a blockchain, or do they just have a database and you say, you will use my database, I am the contractor? I think instead what we're going to see is a series of people occupying or using different ledger technologies that have to intersect for specific projects. And so actually what we'll see is a coalescence of value chains, where me as a small subcontractor is a member of these three projects, and therefore you can no longer tell me you must use my database, because I'll just go, well, hold on, these guys are giving me good business. Instead, let's just see where we overlap briefly for this project, and then I'll move on again. So you may find the tier ones having less commanding power in the future, if you have a networked, a more networked, interconnected economy.
Just one thought on that, and I haven't thought this through, but I've often thought of the power structures in construction as being, now I'm going to have to put the microphone down here to draw it, as being egg timer shaped, like this. So at the very top, the general contractors, the majors, do have a lot of power. Then you go through the various tiers into the subcontractors, some very small ones. And then when you get down to the supply side, the manufacturers, they then become very powerful again. Now, I think you're probably right, with design, bid, build, and with the procurement systems that we've got, it is a little bit like turkeys voting for Christmas or Thanksgiving to get the contractors to take this on board. What about manufacturers at the bottom? Because they're also powerful, if you're to believe this egg timer shaped thing. That may be a possibility.
There is the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund coming out from the government with a couple of £100 million in it. And I think that process, that three-phase process, is one of the pieces that they want to put some money into actually addressing and modernising.
Right.
So that's one for companies in the room to look out for.
Yes, sir.
One of the presentations mentioned the hype curve, and you see cryptocurrencies almost at the plateau stage. Just as a thought, can we use cryptocurrencies to ensure or to actually nudge companies to take up? Can we have a construction cryptocurrency to nudge businesses to start investing or to start thinking about blockchain and actual value cases within the industry?
This is one for the blockchain people, but the BIM people are certainly, the remit side.
And maybe the clients could potentially use that as a way for, awarding innovation, something like that.
That's a very complex question. It's far more complex than it appears at first glance. There's a lot to unpack. So yes, you can. Yes, cryptocurrencies work. No, they haven't been hacked. The mechanisms of ensuring the ledger work perfectly fine. Okay, so the technology is not in question. You can then build in incentive mechanisms using smart contracts and all this sort of stuff so that you make sure that the flows are correct within the system. Then you get to the big one, which is who and why and where does the value actually come from? What is value? So what actually gives the token that you're now exchanging on your new ledger any value whatsoever, whether it's in, Indonesian rupiah or pound sterling? It's the desirability that someone else wants to hold it or take it off your hands. And what do they want to do with that? Well, they want to cash it out as soon as they can. So, yes, you can. Should you? totally different question. That's a long evening in the pub, I think.
Okay, so we'll book that in. Anybody else want to comment on that provocative, apparently simple but complex question? Or shall we move on? I'm told by... Fernando. Away you go.
I think it's a really complex question, no? But I
think you're offline again. It's just red button. Oh, you're on. You're on.
I think, as Rob says, it's a really complex question, but we have to take the cryptocurrencies with, as Robert said, if something is working. It's a clear example blockchain can work. No further value, as you said, because the people, when they are trying to invest, Bitcoin was taken as an investment product instead of a currency, no?
Yeah.
But it's a clear example that blockchain works. That blockchain can be implemented. The human beings, we take this blockchain example, that this can be a currency, and we take this example as an investment product, and that is the volatility we have in the Bitcoin. No? That is a clear example that works. For me, it's my takeaway about the Bitcoins and all the coins and all the cryptocurrencies. You know? No one of them have been hacked.
No.
Look, works. Is there? You can buy today Bitcoins, and I think today it was in $6,000 something. Tomorrow you can have 4,000 or 10,000. But it works. Now,
thanks very much. What? Shall we make it one last question, or we could have more if you like? Well,
I can if you want.
Go ahead.
So I guess there's lots of motivation for using blockchain that's being described as to make things more efficient and economic, and to control things better. So that's to make a more sustainable construction industry. I guess the conflict with that, though, is that some of the methods of the tools that are being used have sustainability implications designed into them. That you try to prevent people from hacking things by making it too challenging or difficult or anything too difficult to do that. Are those two things conflicting, or is that just the, if you like, the hype of the cynics of blockchain?
So, I love this question, the energy consumption of blockchain. So for a start, actually the proof of work method is not the only consensus protocol out there. If you know the other players in the game, which is why maybe your 100 companies or maybe your thousands of suppliers, depending on who you say is allowed to validate transactions within the system versus who is just allowed to observe or submit, you can use different consensus protocols that consume less electricity. In the case of Bitcoin, and I have to make this point, how much electricity and power does it take to secure the value of the British pound? A lot more than it takes to secure the value of Bitcoin. For the similar scale, how much electricity does the US economy burn to secure the value of the US dollar? There's a lot of money involved in securing the value of units of economy.
Isn't there more power going into the Bitcoin network than is going into Ireland?
I thought it was Denmark at last count.
There's 2 nuclear power stations now.
2 nuclear power stations. Apparently, right. So 3 gigawatts or something like that. So how much electricity does a single US aircraft carrier group consume? And they're securing only a fraction of the value of the dollar. You know, you try selling oil for gold, you'll find out how much that dollar is worth.
Very good. And we've got an interest, something there about the nuclear power stations that would interest EDF, of course. So, thanks very much for your contribution, for the contributions of the demand side, let's say, and also for the supply side as well. I'll wrap up the thing now. Thanks very much, and look forward to chatting to you all, or many of you later on, and seeing you again tomorrow. Thanks a lot.